Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas Wacker, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And welcome to the second episode of now 5 coming this week here at the Green Flag. It is a busy week, and it has been already a tremendous week on track at Daytona for the NASCAR Cup Series. We've had the Busch Clash on Tuesday, qualifying last night, and now we've got the Duels later on this evening. So it's going to be a jam-packed week here, jam-packed episode with a whole bunch of things. We're going to be doing a recap of the Duels later on tonight, so make sure you come back and watch that one, as well as the return of our NASCAR fantasy preview. It's the first one of 2021, and we got to start the year off right with getting a good sense of foundation, a good lineup underneath us. And there's some new categories on the NASCAR fantasy app, so that we'll have to be adding into our fantasy previews as well. So that's a no added element to our fantasy previews this year. We don't even have to do it for us. NASCAR is doing the work for us in terms of coming up with ideas. So a very fun episode in store today. We'll recap the Duels, a little bit of news and notes, some qualifying news, and then we'll give you our predictions for the Duels tonight. But before we get into all that, how are you doing today, Kyle?
I am doing fantastic, mainly because the Leafs pulled off a dub over the Habs last night, and that was very fun, in addition to Daytona qualifying. So it's been everything's been good in my area the last week. It was great to see practice return. It was great to see qualifying return, seeing Fox back at the track, because it's almost been a full year since they got to do that. So just everything is on the up right now. I'm just hoping we can continue this momentum through the rest of the week, because it's been fantastic so far.
For sure. Like you said, Fox being back at the track was such a refreshing feeling to have. Again, 3 people in the booth as well.
The three-man booth too.
Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, and Clint Boyer, they had a great chemistry. Boyer's beating himself up on Twitter afterwards, which I thought was kind of funny. But there's some growing pains, of course, when you go into a new site like this and a new job that he's not too familiar with. He's had some experience with it part-time, but I thought he did a masterful job over the Duels, and just provides that little bit of excitement and energy that is desperately needed from that 2-man booth over to that 3-man booth. We're missing the Darrell Waltrip and Larry McReynolds kind of in that booth that provided that energy, and Boyer is going to be that new one for, I'm sure, many years to come, and it seems like the dynamic is off to a flying start. So let's get into the news and notes before we get into the rest of the racing on-track stuff that happened over the past couple of days. Martin Truex Jr., this is the big one. He signs a contract extension with Joe Gibbs Racing, but we don't know if it's multi-year or not. They kind of were a bit vague on the details of it compared to what Denny Hamlin was. It was a confirmed multi-year agreement with FedEx returning, but for Truex, he's at least confirmed until the end of 2022. That's all we really know about the deal so far. It could be till 2023, could be beyond that, who knows, but at least he's going to be at Joe Gibbs Racing for the next 2 seasons, this one including that, and then of course the next gen car season making its debut in 2022. So we'll see what happens with Martin Truex Jr. after that, if he's going to be in contract negotiations next year. But this seemed like it was going to happen over the past couple of days. It was seeming like talks were progressing, and they have finalized it before the season's even started as well. So Joe Gibbs Racing has their entire 4-driver lineup filled out for 2022 next season. Nobody from the Xfinity Series is meant to be coming up to that organization. Sad tear for me, because I don't get that prediction right whatsoever. But
I already get that one right, so I'm feeling good.
You get that one right. You get a tick on that one for Joe Gibbs Racing in our preseason 2022 predictions for the driver market. Make sure to go check that episode out. But your thoughts on Martin Truex Jr., a guy that you're a big fan of as well, Kyle, sticking around with Joe Gibbs Racing for at least another season?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense once again. And it's been widely talked about how JGR likes to get their driver deals done early. And we saw kind of last year where they didn't do that, and it kind of all unraveled for them when Levine Family Racing ended up shutting down because of COVID and everything. They didn't have Jones re-signed, which in retrospect was probably a good thing for them, because then they have space to bring in Bell and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to their veterans, we saw it when Kyle Busch re-signed as well. They like to get it done early and basically before the season even starts, really. If they know that you're a championship caliber driver, they want to lock you in long term. And we saw that in the past week with Denny Hamlin, and now we see it on unknown term for Truex. And I think that this is probably just a 1-year deal, or a 1-year deal plus an option, because when I'm looking at the 3 veterans that you have on that team, Kyle Busch isn't going anywhere. Denny Hamlin isn't going anywhere. If there was one that you were to either move away from or replace or anything like that, it would be Martin Truex Jr. out of that group, because Christopher Bell as well stepping in. He's kind of the next generation of the Toyota group as well. So From JGR Toyota perspective, it makes sense to only kind of do like a 1 or 1+ option kind of thing with Truex, just given the pipeline you have coming up isn't ready just yet. But once it's ready, you don't want to block them or have them go to other organizations again, because you've lost some pretty good talent in the last couple of years already just because of that. So when I'm looking at it, it makes sense in that regard. Truex is still a championship caliber driver going into this season. He's got a very, very well-rounded skill set, which bodes well for the future of where the schedule is going. But he is now over the age of 40. He is past that age 39 peak year kind of caliber seasons. And so it remains to be seen whether he kind of maintains that level over these next couple of years or starts to dip. And if he starts to dip, that's why you do these 1 or 2 year deals. And Denny Hamlin has shown that high level these last couple of years, which is why he's been rewarded with that multi-year extension. Truex had a bit of a fall off last year, granted with a new crew chief. So you can understand maybe why they would go to a 1 or a 1+ option kind of thing. But at least in the short term, re-signing Truex was always the move unless Truex wanted to retire. Obviously, that's not the case, and I'm glad to see him re-up so we don't have to deal with any of those rumors throughout the year.
For sure. I'm happy to see Truex back. He seems like he's a good fit over there at JGR. But like you said, they have some younger prospects in the pipeline that are going to be one to have an itch to get up to the Cup Series level here sooner rather than later. And it will be very interesting to see how JGR handles that dynamic for the upcoming 2 seasons, I'd say, is probably what we're looking at there.
I'd probably say that you're looking at probably still another season and a half, 2 years until they're really kind of knocking on that door and you have to ask that question, unless Harrison Burton has an unreal season this year, which he could absolutely go out and do. But even Christopher Bell had an insane season and he stayed another year in Xfinity, for example, and then went to a different Toyota team. So they've played the long game with some prospects here. I still think that that's probably the Toyota move. So I don't think that we necessarily see any changes at JGR or anything like that, probably for this season and then another on top of that. But if Burton has a great season, if Chandler Smith has a great season, moves up to Xfinity and has another great season, like they've got a lot of guys, particularly in kind of that Truck Series group right now, not necessarily at Xfinity level yet, but a couple seasons down the road, we're going to be having the same kind of Christopher Bell talk with Toyota where they got to find room for him, and there might not necessarily be some. Of course, 2311, if they have expansion there, then maybe that kind of bridges the gap for some people, or it becomes basically a second main team for them. But at least for now, re-signing Truex makes the most sense, but you can see why maybe they're a little bit more vague on the term versus somebody like Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, I completely understand their logic behind it. It's just interesting how they are handling
really
the situation. It is.
Because we're used to
compared to other
all
sports.
other pro sports where salary caps and everything make it so that you have to announce all the terms and everything like that. And that's kind of just like a part of everything. We don't get that in NASCAR, so it's very vague about everything.
Really in any motorsports, to be honest.
No. In F1 a little bit more so, but even then we don't really know driver terms and whatnot and who has option years and who's out of contract. And
we know term more in Formula One, but that's about it. Like we don't know financials or anything like that. Like that is
it's a lot of
secret
estimations.
Yeah, exactly. So congratulations to Truex on getting that contract
Absolutely.
done.
Well deserved.
Definitely. And JGR is going to be staying intact for at least this season and for the upcoming 2022 season next year. So next little bit of news is for the Truck Series race tomorrow night. James Buescher will return to the Truck Series once again. He's going to be racing in the 44 truck for Nice Motorsports. A great little addition. He peaked a little bit. You know, he was around in the Truck Series a little bit last season. I think he ran maybe 1 or 2 races last year. Was it for Nice as well last year?
I think so, yeah.
I think it was
Nice
for Nice
was
as
the
well,
team that had basically 20 drivers come through. So
yeah, we had all the former Glory guys.
If you raced in the Truck Series, you probably ran a race for Nice Motorsports last year.
Exactly. And James Buescher, former series champion as well. People forget about James Buescher, the guy that won that and then also won the Daytona Xfinity Series race, that crazy finish to the line. You know, people forget about James Buescher. I thought, he got some Xfinity Series starts when he moved on from the Truck Series, and then nothing really materialized after that. I think he ran in the number 99 car. forgetting what team that was back then, but he ran in that car for part-time or even full-time, and it just never really, the results never really materialized. So Busch has kind of been on the outs, but at least he's still poking around a little bit, maybe, trying to pull something similar to what Timothy Peters has done, where he's going to try and find a full-time ride here, maybe down the line or not. I don't know if he's interested in that or not, but James Buescher, I'm sure is going to be a nice solid addition to the Truck Series race tomorrow night, Kyle.
Absolutely. And that's another Nice Motorsports truck in the field as well. We know the 3 full-time drivers they have there, and Ryan Truex, Carson Hocevar, and of course, Brett Moffitt. But they're going out and adding a 4th one to this race here with James Buescher. And don't forget, even though they took a bit of a performance hit last year because they didn't have that same GMS alliance, that was still a team that showed up very, very well at super speedways. Don't forget, in that Talladega playoff race, Trevor Bayne was about 2 inches away from winning that race when the caution was thrown. So yeah, they're in the conversation consistently. James Buescher is a guy who's proved it at the Truck Series level in the past. And that's a very formidable lineup. When you look at the veterans specifically there in Truex, Moffitt, and now James Buescher, they're going to have 4 trucks there that can theoretically work together if they all make the field, of course, because there is, I think, 46 trucks looking to qualify.
Yes.
And it's a 36 truck field, I think. So there's 10 getting
qualifying rained out or anything, then it would be 40, but right now for qualifying it's 36.
Exactly. So that's going to be quite the spectacle. Practice goes 5:30 today, so when you're watching this, probably either on right now or just finished up, so we'll get some idea as to who's got speed and whatnot. But if Nice is anything like last year, you would anticipate all those trucks to make the field, and if they do, working together, of course, would be a big thing for them in the race, and I'm sure any of those could be a dark horse threat to win the thing.
Yeah, the Truck Series race at Daytona is just nuts.
It's always a banger, man.
Anybody can win it, and I'm sure
Jordan
that's the
Anderson
case.
was about 2 feet away from doing it last year.
Exactly. Maybe he gets some redemption this weekend. Well,
I would love that.
We'll be talking
Xfinity
about that
too.
race.
He's got 2 chances this year.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that race on our predictions in tonight's later episode of the Green Flag. So make sure you come back and see what we've got in store for that. And also a quick little note here on the NASCAR side of things before we move into Formula One quickly. An interview between the in-depth Graham Bensinger and his iconic interviews that have just so good with celebrities, sports figures, you name it. He's so good at getting people to reveal some details and asking the solid questions. And his most recent episode was with Kyle Busch, a very funny time to release it after the Busch Clash results where he won. It was very interesting. I mean, I watched every single clip of it you can imagine, but the one that was the most notable was the crew chief one, where they talked about what happened with Adam Stevens and how this whole change came together. And I was pretty surprised on what Kyle's side of the story was. And that was that Adam Stevens was the one that actually decided to end the relationship between the two. And I was kind of blown away by that. Kyle said he wanted to make Kyle Busch, wanted to make sure that he wanted to change some personnel over the offseason. He felt like there was some room that they could, change some things up for this upcoming season. But he said that Adam Stevens, you're my guy. You're the guy that I want, and the guy that always makes the car better for me when we have practice. And Adam Stevens basically disagreed with Kyle's philosophy on that decision of maybe changing that personnel and decided that it'd probably be best if they part ways. And I was blown away by that. I don't know about you. I don't know if you've seen the interview or not, Kyle, but it was just kind of really weird how it all is being told. And, we never really heard anything when it first took place, when Ben Beshore is going to be taking over for Adam Stevens for Kyle Busch. There was no real details released as to why that decision took place. But then this interview kind of revealed the entire backstory of it, with this discussion that Kyle said that he wanted Adam Stevens back with him. And Stevens basically jumped ship and went over to Christopher Bell, and Joe Gibbs kind of supported the decision. So I don't know what you actually had to say about it, but Kyle Busch was thrown for a loop over the offseason. He had to go find another guy that he felt could replace Adam Stevens. He didn't really think that was going to be the case, but all in all, it ended up happening.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I hadn't seen the interview yet, but seeing that quote and seeing how things all went down there is very interesting, because you would have assumed that it was something that came from kind of top down and was told basically, we're going to move you around and see if maybe we can find something else that works for both the 20 car, which has been underperforming, and both yourself, which had a rough kind of season and a half, even though they did win the championship still. But yeah, the fact that it was Adam Stevens that kind of looked at the situation and was like, you know what, I think it's probably best for us and for the organization if I move teams. And that's very interesting to me. And
Shocking.
I don't know if it's coming from the perspective of, I think the organization will be better if I'm with the 20 car and somebody else steps into the 18, because Kyle Busch is one of the best drivers we've seen in this generation, and he can perform well with most people. And he's shown at least with the Xfinity races that Ben Bayshore and him have done well together. He's been on the 18 car previously. I know you don't feel great about it going into the season, but there is some areas that you can look at and justify why they made the move. But in the case of Stevens going to the 20, you would assume that him going to that car and with Christopher Bell would be a significant step up in kind of the level of competition from years past from the 20. So if you're JGR and looking at that situation, you would go, yeah, I would rather have 4 competitive cars that have a shot than 3 that have a shot and one that's kind of straggling behind. I don't know if that's maybe the perspective that Stevens was coming from, or maybe Stevens was just tired of the past couple seasons and frustrated with where things were, and he just needed a shakeup for himself personally. I'm not sure necessarily, and I think that's something that you would have to ask him and get more details from him. But I think that's very eye-opening and revealing. And if the season goes either fantastically for Kyle Busch or once again, kind of similar to what happened last year, I think we'll look back at kind of this interview and these comments and maybe be able to take a bit more from it as the season goes along, because right now they're riding high. They're 1-for-1 on the year. But if it starts to go south after this and all of a sudden Adam Stevens maybe has either success or continues to struggle as well with the 20 as well, I think that the decision, of course, was always going to be one of the big storylines going into the season. And with these added comments to it as well, I think it's just going to add even more to everything about the 18 and the 20 throughout the season.
Yeah, the biggest quote that I took away from it was Kyle said that Stevens basically quit on me. And that's something pretty harsh to say about a guy that you've won 2 championships with over the past 5-6 seasons. And I mean, he didn't really hold any remorse back. He didn't really take it. He just kind of went for it.
Wasn't a mutual decision.
No, I think Kyle was pretty hurt by it. And that's fascinating to me because it seemed like, I mean, when I listen to the radio and everything that I've seen over the past couple of seasons from Kyle Busch and with that relationship with Adam Stevens, there's no question that they get along great at the track. And you know, they have a common goal, and that's to win. And they're very, you know, they work really well. They're very cohesive together. It's his best crew chief that he's ever had. And it's probably his best driver that he will ever have. So it's interesting that they decided that after one poor full season that it's time to take a break and move on to something else. So I just had to note that out. I mean, I don't want to seem like it's totally biased for a Kyle Busch fan to be talking about this constantly, but it's a very interesting
because I hadn't seen anyone really talking about that comment and kind of like the big media, like the regular names that you would think about, probably because they're all focused on Daytona and everything, and rightfully so. But that's a very, very eye-opening quote, and that's not really how all of us kind of thought that everything went down. So no, I'm glad you pulled that out and mentioned it, because I think it is something that's absolutely worth talking about and something that I'm sure we'll reference multiple times throughout the year, depending on how the 18 and the 20 are performing. Yeah,
for sure. Let's move on to Formula One here, Kyle. Some interesting news coming out of the F1 Commission's meeting earlier this morning. Portimao, or Portugal, is going to be returning to the F1 calendar tentatively. It's not 100% official, but that is the race that they're planning on going to. They just need some finalization, but it's going to be returning to the calendar on May the 2nd as the to-be-determined race that was on the calendar. They weren't 100% sure on where that slot was going to be, but now they've kind of pointed at Portugal as the place that they want to go and return. And what a great race it was this past year when they went there for the first time. And I can definitely understand why they want to go back. It was an absolutely insane race. And I'm really happy that they are deciding to go to something new. And they saw something that worked last season, and they're sticking to it this year again. So props to Formula One on that decision. And then a couple of other things coming out of there is that there is the possibility of sprint races this season on the Saturday. It's an interesting concept. It's very similar to what F2 is kind of doing as well. So We'll see if anything happens in regards to that this season. It's not 100% official if something's going to happen, but there is some support behind it, behind that idea for this season. So we'll be interesting to see how that would shake up the entire weekend process with qualifying and the sprint races and the actual race on the Sunday, the big one. So an interesting note there. And then also the final one is that there will be an engine freeze for the 2022 season. That's huge for some teams, specifically Red Bull. The only quote that I read in that article was from Red Bull on Formula1.com. So it's interesting in that respect. Then the more sustainable power units are going to be coming for 2025. So that's obviously a great initiative that Formula One is really pushing towards a more eco-friendly environment behind the entire sport. Carbon free is what they're going for in the near future as well over the next decade. So props to Formula One on taking that as a direct positive and a direct initiative that they're going to push for many, many years to come. So out of all of those three news, Kyle, I know all of them are pretty interesting in themselves, but which one maybe stands out to you the most?
In the short term, obviously, it's Portimao and having the Portuguese Grand Prix back and having it scheduled so that it's more likely to go, because the way that some people were originally talking about it was that it would be kind of that second race of the season after the opener in Bahrain. And there was some question as to whether we would be able to do that given Portugal's state of COVID right now. There was some talk that maybe we would end up having to do another back-to-back Bahrain and everything like that, which would have been hit or miss.
It's not the worst, but
depending on what you do layout-wise, of course. But the fact that we're going to be doing Bahrain on the 28th of March, and then second race of the year in Imola again on April 18th, and then following that up with Portugal on May the 2nd. For one, it seems more likely that you'd be able to accomplish all of that. And two, that's a fun start to the season as well. Bahrain, we've been there a lot. They're going to be doing testing there. I'm not sure how great that race is going to be. It's usually a fun race at times, but it's kind of hit or miss. So I'm not expecting a lot from that. But then again, it's the opening race of the season, so we're just happy to see cars go around a track again. But then Imola following and Portimao following have real promise. So I'm excited to see what happens in those races following, especially given that they have race notes on those now and how that maybe differs the race from last year as well. So in the short term, definitely, obviously, the Grand Prix there. Long term, though, engine freeze is kind of whatever. It was something that we knew was going to happen because of Red Bull's situation, but the sustainable power units for 2025 is very, very exciting because we don't really know what kind of technology they're going to be going for. It might be hydrogen, it might be battery, it might be a mix of things, especially with their involvement in Formula E and Formula E's continued development with battery power and everything like that. But I think the big thing for Formula One, obviously, when you look at the sport, you look for sustainable in terms of power engines and everything like that, and the cars that are on track. But the main carbon footprint that they have is the travel, and it's bringing everything across the world and everything that goes into that, because it is a lot. And so it's all fine to get your power engines and everything like that, your power units sustainable. I think that's great because not only is that something that helps the sustainability of the sport itself, but it's also technology that can be applied to everyday cars, which helps in just kind of the grand scheme of things. And that's one of the great things about motorsports is that technological advancements for motorsports also applies to everyday. Exactly. It translates. But the big thing for Formula One is going to be finding a way to be more sustainable and limit that carbon footprint in the travel and everything like that. And that's going to be the big task that they have going into the near future here. We've seen Extreme E make big commitments to no carbon footprint and everything like that in the travel that they'll be doing. And I think there's 6 races that they're going to be doing this season. So it's great to see kind of this initiative from all of motorsports towards sustainability to lessening carbon footprint, everything like that, something that they should have been doing a long time ago. But you know what? Better late than never. And the fact that we're talking about by 2025, which is basically four years from now, when the season would be starting, when those would be prepared for, is very, very exciting news. I'll be excited to see how that development goes along. Obviously, we're not exactly scientists over here, so I'm a bit clueless as to how they'll go about things, but I'll be very excited to see the process and see the development of things, and hopefully the translation as well towards kind of everyday vehicles as well.
Yeah, we don't need to know all the technology stuff about it. We don't know the in-depth stuff, but as long as the
car looks pretty,
and as long as they're saying what they're doing, I can't complain.
Yeah.
So, props to Formula One on that initiative. Like that, they're really driving home, and it's great to see that they are really taking that forefront in motorsports as well. They're the leading motorsport in the world. They're the most famous one, and they are acknowledging that this is a problem with global warming and everything else that is happening in this world right now. It's honestly pretty crazy with everything that we're having to deal with on a regular basis. But Formula One taking a step in the right direction, I'll say that, with their announcement earlier today. On the esports side of things as well, here we've got the virtual GP here, the third and final for Formula One that's upcoming Sunday. I'm sure I'm not going to be watching that while we know what is happening on Sunday. But for the people that are in Europe or whatever, they prefer Formula One, you've got the virtual GP this weekend in Sao Paulo for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Should be interesting to see how that all pans out. We don't need to talk about that too much as well. Shout out to Michael Conti on winning the Coca-Cola iRacing race over the past couple of days at Daytona, their season opener. He gets the win there for Junior Motorsports' esports team. So congratulations to Michael Conti on that victory. The wreck at the end, pretty insane. I don't know if you saw
it. That's pretty
usual. It got quite out of hand, but looking good there for the iRacing stuff, man. I'm pumped for how that's all going to pan out.
That's probably what my next couple of days are going to look like. I haven't got to any of the Daytona racing yet. I love the super speedway racing on iRacing, so I got to get to that before the weekend kind of gets a little too hectic. But I've got a couple wins in my back pocket at Daytona from past weeks where they've run it there. So not to brag or anything, but I'm hoping to pick up maybe a win or two over these next few days as I look to beef up maybe my win total there in ARCA in the Truck Series. Haven't done any Xfinity stuff yet. I think I'll save that for the next season. But a shout out to Michael Conti. Of course, the Coca-Cola iRacing stuff is insane, watching them go 3 wide for the entire race and then wrecking on the last lap as per usual. And then Sao Paulo as well. Interlagos is a fun track, so I'm sure the highlights from that will also be fun.
Yeah, I've been playing iRacing the last couple of nights, and I've just been doing the AI stuff right now. I'm just trying to get my feet wet a little bit. I've been racing the Cup cars.
You do any Super Speedway iRace or AI?
I did at Daytona. I have to bump up the difficulty, I'll say that. I did 65 laps around Daytona, and I basically led every lap, so it was pretty easy. I think I have it at I had it at 60 max. It was right now. I didn't want
that way up.
I didn't know what to expect, so I just kind of took it as it was. But I'll probably get on it later tonight, to be honest, while the deals are going on, make it seem like I'm driving in them, and just go for the win. I raced at Charlotte last night as well, and won a 75 lap race. That was about 70 AI. So I'll take that. I'm figuring it out, slowly but surely. But I had to redo that race about 5 times last night. I blew the lead pretty late on in 3 of them, so it was pretty embarrassing. If you saw the replays and stuff, it was not good. Lap cars, man, lap traffic is terrible.
Just wait till you get real people as lap cars. It's even worse.
Yeah, lap cars they just, I don't even want to get into it. But yeah, the iRacing esports side of things, they know what's going on that side of things, both for us personally and in the world of esports with motorsports. So shout out to the winner there, Michael Conti, for NASCAR, and then we'll see who wins the Brazilian GP there for the F1 side of things. And one IndyCar final, a little bit of news before we get into the other stuff with NASCAR for this past couple of days. Charlie Kimball will race for AJ Foyt Racing in the number 11 at both the Indy GP race, so on the road course, and then the Indianapolis 500 later on this season. So a nice little addition there. Charlie Kimball's been around the sport for quite a few years now, and has put in a decent shift here and there in his time over his IndyCar career. So happy to see that he's going to get a shot here of trying to go for a Indianapolis 500 trophy, and maybe go for a solid top 10 result there for the Indianapolis road course, Kyle.
Yeah, Kimball's had some good results in the past at the 500 when he was with Chip Ganassi. This last couple of years with Carlin, and then AJ Foyt hasn't had necessarily the same success, but there's been a couple top tens mixed in there. So it's nice to see him get a couple races here and just kind of flesh out the field once again as the IndyCar season goes along, because we know about a bunch of the big name additions and everything like that, but it's always most important to have those kind of full fields, have those veterans of IndyCar to really have those reference points for a lot of these new guys as well. And so getting Charlie Kimball back for at least a couple races here is another big thing.
For sure. Alrighty. Let's get into our first race recap for the NASCAR side of things, Kyle. We've got the Busch Clash that took place on Tuesday night on the Daytona road course for the first time in its history of the race. So pretty exciting race, I'd have to say, overall. Definitely a lot higher than what they were definitely exceeding my expectations than what we had going into it. That's for sure. The competition caution actually worked relatively well, I'd say, at that time. And 15 laps, lots of different strategy as well, was saving some sets for some drivers. We saw the dirt at the back stretch chicane as well be quite the issue throughout the race. It was just pretty exciting overall. And at the end of it all, Kyle Busch is your victor, everybody. But it was not without a lack of the dramatics in the final couple of laps. So let's just take a quick little look at what the race had in store. Harvick had a rough night, I will say that. Spun multiple times, just proving that his road course abilities are not quite up to par of what that 4-car's abilities are on most weekends on the mile-and-a-half, short tracks, basically anything else but the road courses. Stewart-Haas Racing kind of looked in shambles last night, or not last night, but on Tuesday night. That was rough start to the season for them as an organization. So it kind of lends you to believe that the road courses will continue to be a struggle for that organization this season. Martin Truex Jr. was a hot topic of discussion as well on this night, as he went from the back to the front to the back again with a problem there where he got the lead and just had a brain fart moment where he missed the front stretch chicane, which you have to do under the competition caution. He just went straight like it was on the oval. I can't blame the guy. It's probably a little bit of an out-of-body experience after how many laps he's done around Daytona to do that chicane, but you expect the guy that's in the 19 car leading the race to know the rules. So he got sent to the back there, tail end of the longest line, penalty for him, and he worked his way back up to the lead, only to wreck as soon as he gets it after getting into the mud in the backstretch chicane and hitting the outside wall. A rough night for Martin Truex Jr., and it was filled with ups and downs, and probably had the strongest car on the evening, but just didn't quite get that execution. So I did feel pretty good, I have to say, about my Championship 4 predictions after this race, because all 4 of them were like really up at the front after that one. But I mean, if the Busch Clash is not a sign of what the season really narrative is.
I just want to apologize, because I thought we were picking who we thought would finish last. And so that's why I picked Truex, because I knew that he would go out and wreck in that fashion and then finish last. So of course, I thought that's what we were doing. So I apologize.
We forgive you, Kyle. It's Thank you. It's all in the past now. We'll see if that trend continues with your rest of your predictions for the season, and if you come up with that excuse another time.
What? If I pick who finishes last more often than I do who finishes first, I think that's almost more impressive.
I don't know. You could just pick the Rick Ware cars every weekend, and you probably would do pretty well.
But they usually don't finish last because somebody wrecks.
So, that's true. That's true. We'll see if that big brain over here from Mr. Cushman this season going with the last to last challenge.
Let's hope that I don't continue that trend, because if that trend continues, then I'm getting my ass handed to me in fantasy. So.
I'm good with it. Also, Cole Custer, another SHR guy that had some problems. It was kind of a weird incident there. It seemed like he just missed the chicane, but then he actually had an entire brake failure with that car. So rough night there, caught on fire a little bit. So he had to exit the race car, and he was done for the night a little bit earlier on than he would have obviously liked. Pit strategy was also a key factor there late after that Truex wreck. That was the last caution of the race. Some guys had a tire set left, some didn't. Chase Elliott was on the aggressive on the tire strategy on the beginning side of the race, which led him to having to stay out late in the going. And Ryan Blaney pulled off a really masterful strategy where he pitted earlier on after he smoked the tires up on a restart when he was leading, then came down pit road, changed them, and then he saved a set during the competition caution. So it all kind of worked out for Blaney there. So it kind of set up for this best friend duel late in the going here on the restart. You know, Blaney's back in about 7th or 8th, I think it was, and all these other guys had had older tires, so he got to run them relatively quickly. Kyle Busch was also in that same strategy with Blaney, so he was kind of following suit, but just a couple of cars behind him as Blaney got his way through the pack. And Blaney looked really solid on both old tires and on new tires as well, so that could be an encouraging sign for him this upcoming season. So Chase takes the race late on that restart for the first time of the night. And, Chase Elliott on road courses has been prone to be pretty exceptional the past couple of seasons.
Really?
So you thought that maybe Chase Elliott could maybe drive away, but the fresh tires did really pay off. And you don't really realize how long of a lap it is for the Cup cars until you actually look at it. It's about two minutes for these guys compared to what we saw in the Rolex 24. It was like really snail's pace. So it was kind of a different kind of tone to the race for sure. Chase Elliott having to go a lot slower than what he was accustomed to just a couple of weeks ago for the Rolex 24. But Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney coming down to the end of it. Blaney actually gets past Chase Elliott with 2 laps to go, and Chase has to overdrive that thing like I've never seen anybody do, honestly. He drove it into the corner so deep to try and keep pace with Blaney, and he actually managed to do so somehow. I thought when Blaney took the lead, it was kind of over, but when Blaney was
thought, but he was a man on a mission, man. That was
Blaney
incredible.
Was making mistakes though too. That has to be noted as well. He was kind of getting the pressure from Chase Elliott there. I'm sure he was having a smile behind the wheel as well. Chase Elliott trying to chase him down there and vice versa there late in the going. 2 best buds battling it out for the season opening victory. It all comes down to the final chicane on the final lap of the race. Chase Elliott in second, Ryan Blaney in first, and Blaney gets absolutely punted out of the way by Chase Elliott, gets spun after Elliott hits the turtles, what they quote unquote turtles, the basically the bump in the corner, and sends Blaney into the outside wall. And Mr. Busch, about a second and a half back, entering that last chicane, takes advantage of the best friends having a little bit of issues, and Kyle Busch wins the Busch Clash in 2021, his second career victory in the season opening race. So congratulations to Kyle Busch on getting that. Pretty incredible race, I have to say, for the season opener compared to what we were expecting. Yeah. Like I said earlier, we usually see it on this high banks, and it's been hit or miss sometimes with depending on the package or the actual risk that drivers are willing to take. Last year was just basically a you-know-what show. And
literally every single car was involved in a crash.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts last year. So they decided to go with the road course this year. And I have to say, it's encouraging signs for what may be to come on the upcoming second race of the regular season, that is for the Cup Series cars. So your overall impressions from the Busch Clash the other night, Kyle?
Very impressed, I gotta say, because going into it, you thought that it would probably just be a glorified test session. It would be boring. There wouldn't be a whole lot of action. Limited field as well, so you wouldn't have as much action potentially to happen in the race either when you're looking at a 2022, 21 cars in the field, I think it was. Versus a 40-car field. Obviously, you're cutting it in half, so you've got half the amount of on-track battles that you could potentially look at in theory. But I was very impressed. There was consistent action throughout the field, even if the leader got out to a little bit of a lead. There was action throughout the pack. There was comers and goers. Tires were a big factor throughout the race. And overall, it was very, very fun. And it's not necessarily something that I expected going into this race. I thought it would be maybe kind of hit or miss going into this one. And I think it was a hit. And when you look at what NASCAR wanted, they were looking for something that wouldn't be as much of a tire fire as the Clash in previous years was. Save owners as well some money where you're not going out knowing that you're going to wreck something essentially. And I think the Clash delivered. So I'm excited about it. I don't know if it stays on the road course going into the future, especially when you're looking at the next gen car coming in and kind of the unfair advantage that it would be to have a road course test race for some teams instead of others. But I hope that it stays on the road course into the future, honestly, when I'm looking at this, because the Daytona road course isn't on the schedule in most years. Last year was an exception. Okay. This year is an exception because of some outside circumstances. Most years it won't be on the schedule though. And if we're starting the year with the Daytona road course, get a 35 lap race in there to start the year, it's going to be more special than it's going to be or feel this year, where we just had one last year and we've got one coming up in another couple of weeks. That's why we were excited about it on the road course when it was first announced, because it wasn't going to be on the regular season. Things have changed since then, but I like it going into the future. I don't know necessarily about next year, But then again, I don't know about car owners going into a new generation of car and wanting to immediately wreck them all in a Busch Clash around the oval. So I don't really know what the kind of right mix is next year. Maybe it's going around the oval with this current gen of car one last time and just saying, screw it, go wreck all your equipment and have one last fun race. I don't know if maybe that's the thing to do. But honestly, I really enjoyed this, and I think going into the future might be the move, honestly.
Interesting. I don't know what I feel about it yet, to be honest. Like, if the road course on the regular season side of things is on the calendar, then I say, you know, I don't mind it as the preliminary race to open the season on the road course. But if it's not, I just prefer it to be on the oval, to be honest. I thought the race was pretty good, to be honest. But I don't know if I need a road course to open the season. I think Daytona by itself on the high banks is just good in itself for most of the time anyways. And I'd rather watch that, I think, than a road course to open the season every year, especially with the amount of road courses that it seems that we're going to have for the calendar for the future years here. So I would probably kind of stick with the super speedway package as much as we can when we can get it, because we only get 4 races of it this season. So having that to start the season off is not the worst thing. And I know the owners do get a bit disgruntled by the results of it, having a damaged car basically and a wrecked race car by the time it's all said and done. But at the end of the day, it is a little bit of entertainment. And the Busch Clash did deliver, though. I will say that. Not to say that I was pretty happy with the outcome no matter what, even if Kyle Busch didn't win it. But with Busch winning it, it was just a little bit of an added bonus there. So he gets the first win there with Ben Bayshore. So hopefully that is a bit of a momentum booster for himself there as well for this season, and built that relationship up a little bit more. But Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, they were trying to build it up on the broadcast as well. Oh, can we see something on pit road? No, they were pretty calm about it.
It's Clash.
Exactly. So. It's not points paying race, just all out there for fun. And at the end of the day, Chase Elliott comes home second. So I was close with my winner pick, but I'll end up taking this result at the end of the day. Chase Elliott finishes second. Truex finishes last in the race. So a bit of an opposite kind of end of the spectrum there in terms of our predictions there, Kyle. But I will say, if Truex didn't have that
just
issue,
a little bit.
I think Truex probably was the favorite to win it there late, no matter what on strategy, because it seemed like that car was pretty fast throughout the race. But it
was also weird seeing a DeWalt 19. That was a bit weird.
It was a good looking paint scheme, though. I'll give it that.
The paint scheme looks so good.
Yeah,
but I was not prepared to see that on the 19. That was a bit strange. But what I'll say here is, on the oval in regular Busch Clash years, a lot of the race is just kind of single file, just kind of biding your time until the last 5% of the race. And in a road course race, you're getting more consistent action throughout the whole thing. So the entire race is more enjoyable. Whereas for the Clash, I think maybe like the last 5-10% of the race is more enjoyable. And when I'm looking at Jeff Cluck's Clash polls in recent years,
it did well.
2018, 48%, 2019, 21%, which of course is because of the rain shortened and being terrible. Crap, and then one move for the race and wreck and everything like that. We remember it all too well. Last year with all the wrecks, just 49.7%. This year on the road course, 83.9%. So a massive increase in just overall fan interest and attitude towards the race. I don't know if NASCAR pays attention to that kind of thing and wants to keep it on the road course into the future.
Jeff Cluck's poll specifically decide the future of this sport.
Exactly. But I mean, the numbers don't lie there. And when I'm thinking back to recent years, the Clash has kind of been underwhelming. It's been either a wreck fest or it's been boring and just kind of a nice little 1 or 2 lap finish, if that, with a bunch of wrecks involved for guys just kind of going for the win and not really caring because there's no points on the line. This was a nice change up, and I don't know what they do into next year. But I think they might have won me over for the road course. I don't know.
Interesting. I'm not 100% sold. I can deal with it. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but I don't know. I think the 2012, 2014 Busch Clashes, or then the Budweiser Shootout, or the Sprint Showdown. It's had so many different names over the years, but
there's been a lot.
Yeah, I think that they were pretty damn solid races in itself back then. I think last year, 2018, we were just kind of getting used to the package a little bit more, but then 2019, we saw them taking it very tentatively, obviously, and then 2020 they just went guns a-blazing to start the season. But if it wasn't for the wrecks, I thought the racing wasn't too bad. That was all in the last
10 laps. For the previous part of that, it was basically single file, and then the last 10 laps, they all just decided to go bonanza. So
yeah, I don't know. It is hit or miss sometimes with the Busch Clash. So
that's why I think that I'm on the side of the road course, because one, in regular years, it's a different track that has a lot of history as well that wouldn't be on the regular season schedule. So it's a different track as well. So it's not necessarily like an added benefit to teams in it to get any like testing data or anything like that. You could apply maybe some stuff to other road courses throughout the year, but essentially you're not running on the same track. And in a road course, you're getting more consistent action than you would throughout a single file Daytona race until the last 5 laps, because there's nothing to race for. So I definitely get the other side of it. Of course, we could get to the next gen car, and super speedway racing could be just as entertaining as it's been for these last couple of years, and we could be clamoring for it again. I don't really know, but I think if they go back to the oval, I think it'll be an interesting decision. If they stick with the road course, I don't think you can blame them at this point.
Yeah, the sequential shifting should be an interesting addition to that next gen car. So
well, I can safely say that we won't be getting top times at like 1:56.9, which, by the way, Ryan Blaney having the fastest lap was a little bit interesting. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure it was because of the lower fuel load and the fresh tires at the end of the race, because he did it on lap 33 or 35 as well. But there was some interesting stuff to take out of some of those fastest lap times. And I think the one kind of eye-opening thing was the fact that the fastest SHR car was 13th out of 21. And it was Cole Custer of all people as well. Eric Almirola was second last. And I don't know. I'm fascinated to see, this is a bit more of a tangent, but I'm fascinated to see what Chase Briscoe does, because we know how good he is on road courses. It can be, but SHR hasn't been good. So is it a driver thing or is it an SHR thing? I think we'll find that out this year as well.
Yeah, the big talking point as well, obviously, besides the finish itself, but Tyler Reddick had a very, very solid run in 4th position there. Very impressive. And if he continues that pace on the road courses this season, or somewhat close to that, I mean, he's almost a playoff favorite, to be honest. When you look at the competition, he's around to make it. So that's a huge bonus. If Reddick steps it up on the road courses, I'm almost regretting my decision to put the 23 car in there instead of Tyler Reddick right now, because I think he's probably pretty solid on the 1.5 miles.
He was a full second faster on his fastest lap than Austin Dillon was. Yeah, and I'm sure some of that huge. I'm sure some of that comes from being up front a little bit more and having some of that more space to work with as well. So you can't take everything from the fastest lap times, because it's a race situation. So it's not everybody having the same kind of clean track to work with. But there is some stuff that you can look at there, and Reddick being in the top 10 is fascinating. Chris Buescher as well, very impressive throughout some of those times. Unfortunate to have that spin at the end and kind of lose that finishing position, but he's another guy that's been sneaky at road courses as well. So
Eric Jones in 8th as well. I thought that was pretty impressive for him. Yeah,
especially with Richard Petty, who, no offense to Bubba Wallace, but isn't a good road course
on the
racer.
Road courses.
And the fact that they've been able to have a good setup for him there is very interesting. And we know Jones has been good on road courses as well. So a lot of fun stuff to kind of look at from this race. And when we get to the Daytona road course as well, I think there might be some carryover from this as well that we can maybe keep an eye on, and maybe some dark horses that show up in that race, or maybe not. I don't know, but definitely a fun clash, which I don't think we've been able to say the last couple of years.
For sure. That's a good way to end the Busch Clash discussion there. Congrats to Kyle Busch on getting that victory. And we'll move into
that part.
Well, I will say it for any winner this season, but it just means a little bit extra when it comes to that. But Daytona 500 qualifying happened last night, Kyle, under the lights for the first time as well. So a very, very fun element.
It still exists. Can you believe it?
That's the big thing I want to drive home. I don't think you understand how nice it was to see practice and qualifying.
Dude, I watched every second of that 50-minute practice session, and it was awesome. Like, I loved it.
I think people are so underestimating how valuable practice is, not just for the broadcasting side of things, but for the sponsors and for these smaller team cars.
Yep.
They are getting these shout outs and at least 2 minutes worth of talking points about their sponsorship or something that's happened over the off
Rick
season.
Ware was on the TV for legitimately like a minute 30 straight when they were talking about Cope, when they were talking about Cody Ware because he was in Rolex. Yeah. Like they showed each of them for a legitimate amount of time. And
huge
even
exposure.
in qualifying, you can't even say the same because for some reason they cut away from Smithley's run to show Bubba Wallace on his outlap, which was dumb. But no, it's when those smaller teams get the exposure for their sponsors, and you can't go and cry about small teams not being able to get sponsorship and stuff, and then also not show those same small teams when they do have sponsorship and things like practice. And that's where it really comes through, and you get to see all the new paint schemes and everything like that. It's a good opener for the entire week.
Exactly.
And it's just frustrating that we won't get it as often as we should. Hopefully in 2022 we'll get it all back, but
they have to bring it back for the next gen car, in my opinion. They have to. That's just not right if they allow them to not have practice on a consistent basis. They have to have them have practice to test this car out on a regular basis.
Would think
you would just set them up for disaster for future years to come here if they don't put practice and qualifying back on every single weekend. And I'm saying every single weekend, everybody. This is not just a one-off weekend here or there. This has to be a consistent thing. It's a vital part of the fan experience as well when we are allowed to have fans back at the track. Like, it just all makes sense. I get it, understand it for this season. There's some tracks, you're going there for the first time. You have to have practice and qualifying. It makes sense. But when fans are finally back in the stands at full capacity and we don't have to worry about COVID, hopefully that's in the sooner rather than later future, then you have to have that fan experience. It's a great way to have the entire day at the racetrack. I can speak to it as well. Being there from the morning the garage is open, basically, first practice for no matter what it is, trucks, Xfinity or Cup Series, just being down in the garage area and just seeing all the drivers come to their cars or something like that. It's huge exposure for the sport, and it's vital to their success. So I think that's one of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing I've taken away from the past couple of days, is how much I actually miss practice and qualifying, because it is such a fun part of the weekend just to see the cars reliant on speed alone. And boy, oh boy, was the Hendrick Motorsports stable, specifically Alex Bowman and William Byron, on rails on qualifying last night.
Alex Bowman was a freaking bullet out there in qualifying.
Yeah. Alex Bowman will lead the field to the green flag for Sunday's 63rd Daytona 500 after an astonishing lap with an average speed of 191.261 miles per hour. Remember, this is single car runs, everybody, for a lap time of 47.056. That is almost 0.3 faster than his nearest competitor, his teammate,
full mile per
coming
hour
out of the same stable. And William Byron, he pulled off a lap time of 47.314, so almost 0.3 faster, like I said. So Hendrick locks out the front row. I get the pole position pick correctly here. You get the outside pole position pick correctly here. So combined,
we just need to combine our stuff. Even for Rolex, we would have been great if we combined, but
we have a sense of on both sides of things here. We can get that right. So I feel pretty damn solid on how we started off our motorsports predictions this season. I got to be completely honest.
Decent,
so Alex Bowman gets the pole for the fourth year in a row. He's starting on the front row as well. The first driver to ever do that. So Greg Ives and that entire team has just nailed the setup on the super speedways to, it's great exposure for their sponsors every year. They're basically on the front row, it seems, for Alex Bowman. He's a great super speedway racer and a qualifier specifically. So we'll see if that can translate into success on Sunday. It's been a struggle for Hendrick to win the big race for the past couple of seasons. JGR has been, taking that conservative approach in qualifying. Denny Hamlin is just also a really great super speedway racer, which has resulted in his wins over the past couple of seasons. He's going for 3 in a row as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Wow, what a great qualifying though as well. Great exposure for the sponsors. Great to see it under the lights. The sparks were just flying off of these things. Fox as well with the great tracker as well with the ghost car. Boyer was getting me all amped up with Bowman's lap. It was just great to see that back. But then also for the open entry cars, this is also a big part of Daytona 500 qualifying. Who makes it and who doesn't make it in on speed. We have 2 drivers making it in. We get 50% right on this one as well, Kyle, between the two of us. Ryan Preece is going to be making the Daytona 500 based off his speed with a really impressive lap time of 8th on the starting grid. It's not going to be his final position. That is going to be happening over the duels results, but for based off of speed, you went for him as your pole position pick based off of speed, but not too far off. 8th position. The Hendrick Motorsports guys,
about it. Still felt decent about it.
That's a really great swing for that result.
Yeah,
so
I took the big swing on it, just figuring that, of course, JTG in that open entry is going to need to put more emphasis on qualifying than anybody else in the field other than the other open entries.
Yeah.
Not necessarily pay off, but I'll gladly take an 8th overall in qualifying on the big kind of swing. Bowman was, of course, going to be the favorite to do it. And so very happy to see the 48 on the pole and everything like that. But you know what? I'll gladly take an 8th overall for Preece.
Yeah, and then the second guy for the open entries was David Reagan.
Yes.
Probably shockingly for a lot of people. We talked about him a little bit in our most recent episode where we said don't sleep on David Reagan, a very good super speedway racer. I thought he was going
to be a race it in guy because Ford versus Ford with Cindric as well, and front row straight up outperforming Penske in terms of raw pace. Like, that's damn impressive.
I think to an extent it may come down to Reagan's experience to a slight factor there compared to Cindric is hopefully making his Cup Series debut. We'll see on how that results tonight. But David Reagan showing why he's a great super speedway racer and a great qualifier at these places. And he's locked himself into the Daytona 500. That's a huge accomplishment for them to not have to worry about the duels tonight. When you look at what he was competing against, namely Austin Cindric there for a team Penske car, that's pretty impressive. So Ryan Preece and David Reagan are in the Daytona 500 confirmed. So it leaves 2 open entry spots to go. We'll look at that duels preview in just a little bit here. But some notable standouts, I'd say, from speed. Eric Almirola was on pace for a pole lap until coming out of 3 and 4. Car just kind of quit on him, it seemed, and Byron's just excelled really quickly out of 4.
Byron had an insane exit out of 3 and 4.
And Almirola qualifies technically 3rd. We'll see where he ends up for the actual starting position once the duels results happen tonight. Bubba Wallace in 4th for 2311 Racing's debut for qualifying. That's pretty speedy. The top qualifying Toyota as well, outclassing the TRD guys over there at Joe Gibbs Racing. So that's a huge statement there. Denny Hamlin with the most awkward interview I've ever seen him take in his lifetime. I'm nervous. You just could not put his words together. You could just actually see the nerves basically coming off of this guy. And can you blame him? I mean, the amount of turnaround this team has had to do in such quick succession for 2311. That's pretty impressive to qualify 4th for right now. We'll see where he ends up on race speed, but he was fastest in the only practice as well. But Toyota stuck together there with their 5 cars to get the tandem draft going. That prevailed them to excuse me, my voice is going. Prevail them to the top of the timing sheets there with a top 5 in practice there. So we'll see how Bubba Wallace does come the race tonight in its first full-time action on the racetrack for Bubba Wallace behind the wheel. Let's not forget Ty Dillon was in the Busch Clash for that team. So also Ty Dillon was a little bit disappointing, I'd say, as well, finishing 18th in that Busch Clash. That's just a little bit of a side note there. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 5th there. So JTG, strong representation there from the qualifying results there. Christopher Bell as well, the leading Toyota guy for JGR. So that's a big statement for them. Adam Stevens set him up with a pretty decent car. Daniel Suarez in 10th was another great effort for Trackhouse. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, no, I think the big thing for me is there's not a lot that you can take out of Daytona 500 qualifying. But if there's one thing you can look at, there's a clear differential between back markers, mid-pack, and top-tier teams. And in terms of the back markers, we saw kind of from Ty Dillon on down in terms of qualifying speed, you could tell the teams that were kind of your either back marker open entries or the teams that usually are finishing 30th on back. Daniel Suarez was nowhere near that. And coming into this year, we didn't really know what to expect from Trackhouse. We knew about the RCR lines and everything like that. But the fact that they qualified 10th in raw pace and were inside the top 5 for much of that night, out qualifying teams like Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson in the 5, Kyle Busch, like they have legitimate speed. And I don't know when we get to mile and a halves and kind of the regular tracks, if they're going to be more like 25th or if they're going to be really a third RCR car. And I don't know where that's going to end up being, but very, very impressed by Daniel Suarez and the 99 team on this opening week.
For sure. David Reagan was 13th there, so that was the position that he needed to get to qualify into. And Austin Cindric, his nearest competitor, was 19th.
And not just that for Reagan either. They had that thing wound up because David Reagan was 13th, McDowell was 27th, and Alfredo was 32nd. So they had that car wound up to go fast, unlike anybody else there. And you would expect that because they needed to get in on speed. Well, didn't need to, but ease their mind at most there. But yeah, Reagan up there in 13th is great to see because last year he finished top 5 in that same kind of car, even though it was technically, I think it was Rick Ware technically, but it was rebranded to 36 and it was a front row car. Excited to see what he can do now that he's locked in the show, because we know his prowess on super speedways. He's always there at the end, and front row consistently is always there at the end as well. So
sneaky fantasy pick here. Sneaky fantasy pick. Not going to lie. Could be.
Does he make an appearance later tonight? We'll see.
Maybe. Stay tuned for that. Austin Cindric, like I said, 19th, his nearest competitor there for the open entries, and Kaz Gralla there right behind him in 20th place. Yeah. So those two are your favorites coming into the duels for tonight to make it in on race pace. But we do have some interesting guys that could go up there and sneak their way into the duels.
To be fair, we don't know what to expect from the 62 because they didn't set a time because they failed tech 3 times.
Yes.
So they're the big wild card for me because they're going into the duel.
Pretty nuts tonight.
Yeah. We know that very well, but I think the big thing for me is that we don't know what to expect from them, and I think that's the duel to kind of pay more attention to, because the other one, you've got Cindric there. He's probably going to make it through unless he gets in a wreck.
Dillon could be something. You never know.
The 96 has been involved, but
he missed it last year, so...
Exactly. You got to think that Cindric's the favorite by a decent margin there, whereas with Gralla and Gregson, that's kind of a coin flip for me. And
interesting.
And I think that they were very close last year as well on qualifying pace. So you would have expected it to be close this year again. I think it's going to be a great second duel I think they're in, right?
Yes.
For that one.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big thing to watch, because coming down to that finish is going to be, I think, between them, unless they get caught up in a wreck, which they absolutely could, and the MBM car could go through and make it in. But that's going to be a great thing to watch coming up tonight.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into the preview here in just a second, but do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up on the qualifying side of things?
Yeah, it was nice to have qualifying again. And look, I know it's a niche thing that most people don't necessarily watch, but it's motorsports. We should have qualifying. And I understand why NASCAR doesn't right now because of COVID. They have the biggest garage areas by a decent margin in all of motorsports. F1 can do it because they've got 20 cars in the field. NASCAR has twice that many, plus probably
other series.
The same, other series as well. You can understand why they don't, but if this is a long-term thing, that's when it starts to become a major issue for myself. I'm glad that they are doing the 8 races this year, the new tracks, and then the big one, the opener and the closer to the season. But if this is something that continues past this year, that's when it becomes a big issue for me.
Yes.
But it was just very refreshing to have kind of this full weekend and not just kind of go into Sunday blind and just kind of have the cars on track for the first time before the race.
Yeah. We have 2 more practice sessions for the Cup Series on Saturday as well, so they'll get a couple more opportunities to tune up their cars before Sunday's race, but they have the duels to deal with tonight first off. So they had, obviously, they impounded the cars last night, so they could not touch them prior to the race tonight. So we'll see if qualifying speed translates into race speed this year, or if some of the guys that maybe took a little bit more of a more downforce approach and more handling approach can prevail in the duels tonight. So let's get into what the duels are looking like for tonight's races. So we have 2 duels tonight. First one with Alex Bowman leading the field in that one. That car looks so fast, 0.3 faster almost than the field.
Yeah.
I wonder if he could just kind of run away with it and just kind of keep pace there at the front. Strategy, as always, is a big thing in terms of how you want to play it. If you want to go aggressive on the track, or if you want to go more aggressive on pit strategy or whatnot, we'll see what happens tonight. But let's take a look at who is racing in which duel. So Duel 1 has Alex Bowman, Eric Almirola, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Christopher Bell, Ryan Preece already locked in, so he doesn't have to worry. We'll see what they do tonight if he wants to just take it easy and just try and keep that primary car intact and ride around in the back. I would imagine he does something similar to that. Daniel Suarez, Denny Hamlin, the two-time defending Daytona 500 winner, is going to be in the duel number 1. Kyle Larson in this one in his return to the sport, so we'll keep an eye on him tonight. Matt DiBenedetto. Austin Cindric is the big one in this one in terms of open entry cars, so he's got his teammate right there with Joey Logano, and he's got Matt DiBenedetto, a Ford teammate
that's
there.
huge
So
for him.
that's what I was going to say. That is huge for Austin Cindric. I expect that those three are going to be working together all night long, and it does not hurt that they are starting relatively close to each other. So you can see where the Penske stable kind of invested their speed into, with them being so relatively close in terms of qualifying speed. So Logano there in 11th, Ryan Newman there in 12th, Cole Custer, Michael McDowell, Eric Jones, Tyler Reddick had a disappointing qualifying there for himself, so he's going to have to work his way up from the back. We've seen how aggressive he is on the super speedways in the past. Ty Dillon, as well as the other open entry car, Jamie McMurray as well. Going to be fun to watch him tonight, see what he can do. Quinn Houff in this one. Timmy Hill as well is an open entry car, so we'll see if he can get up in the mix at all tonight, how well he wants to race it or what his strategy is. Cody Ware and our guy Josh Bilicki rounds out the duel number 1. It's going to be a fun one. I'm interested to see what happens in this one. It's kind of all over the place in terms of speed and talent and what we've seen in the past with super speedway racing. Two of your favorites, Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin, going to be in this one in terms of their previous success on these types of tracks. But we also have some interesting guys making their debuts. Daniel Suarez in this one for Trackhouse. We'll see how they fare in this one. He's got his kind of RCR teammate, if you will, with Tyler Reddick in this one. So we'll see if they end up working together at some point in time. Eric Almirola is kind of all by himself up there, it feels like, in terms of his super speedway prowess compared to his teammates. Cole Custer, we'll see what he does if they link up together. And Alex Bowman's only got one teammate in this one with Kyle Larson. So we'll see if the Hendrick guys can get together here at some point in time. So what are your expectations coming into Duel 1 here? The one that really kicks off the night, usually the lesser of the two in terms of entertainment, and what we see with the driver lineups here, it kind of lends that way as well. But what are you expecting here from Duel number 1?
Yeah, this is a very interesting one, because when I'm looking at it here, Austin Cindric is absolutely the favorite to make it through in the open entries. He's got a couple of teammates there in DiBenedetto and Logano right with him at the start as well, so it should be easy for them to link up and stay together for most of that race. Ty Dillon, on the other hand, only has one Toyota to theoretically work with there, and Christopher Bell, so that's a bit of a hit there. It's not like he could potentially have anybody else to work with. He's got
Hamlin in there.
Oh, Hamlin, sorry, I missed him. So he's got a couple, but even then, it's not like anything else where there's like any like notable teammates or anything like that for Ty Dillon and for God Brothers. It's not like
96 didn't do practice runs with them either, so I don't know how much JGR really wants to work with the 96 at all.
Exactly,
if any.
So it's something where I don't know if Ty Dillon's going to be up in the mix. You would think that he would have to be and put that pressure on Cindric to either make a mistake or beat him outright. But this is very much kind of the lesser of the two duels, whether you look at the lineup or the open entry battle as well. It's very much the opening act to the second duel, because there's obviously things to watch. Bowman, what's his race pace like? Almirola, what's his race pace like? What are some of the teammates going to look like? Some of the strategies and whatnot. But when you look at the second duel, that's very much where some of the bigger names lie, where the open entry battle lies. So it's kind of nice in that regard, because we get a nice kind of entry point and then into the second one. But there's still some stuff to watch for. I'm excited to see what Eric Jones can do in the 43, because we've seen the 43 do well on super speedways with Bubba Wallace, and Eric Jones in his own right has been a fantastic super speedway guy as well. Jamie McMurray in the 77, what kind of pace does that Chip Ganassi aligned Spire Motorsports car have? So there's still some stuff to watch for, but definitely not as much as that second duel.
For sure. And also on Tyler Reddick there, he will start at the rear for that duel due to a transmission change. Bob Proctor's with that report just before we started recording. So I don't expect that to be too big of an issue. There's only 22 cars in the duel, so it shouldn't take too long if you
do it now before you need to before the 500.
Exactly. So there's no real penalty to this one in terms of the Sunday results for it. He doesn't have to start at the rear for that. Just get it done while you can here, and it won't hopefully have an impact for him as the week goes on. But let's take a look at duel number 2, the one that we're probably the most excited about here, just based off of the caliber of drivers and this race your way in open entry lineup that we've got here. So we've got William Byron, the outside on the front row for the Daytona 500. He's going to be starting on pole for this one. Bubba Wallace, Kevin Harvick, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, David Reagan, the Busch brothers, Kurt ahead of Kyle, Ryan Blaney, first open entry here in Kaz Grala in 10th, Chase Briscoe making his Cup Series debut here in 11th, Ross Chastain in the 42 car, Brad Keselowski all the way down in 13th place, so he was the slowest of all the Penske cars over qualifying, so we'll see if he comes up through the pack in this one. Martin Truex Jr. there in 14th, Chris Buescher, Anthony Alfredo, Corey LaJoie, and his new team with Spire, Garrett Smithley there, another open entry. So we'll see if he could do anything in the number 13 car. He wasn't expecting too much going into the qualifying side of things. They kind of dedicated themselves toward the race. So we'll see if they get into the mix at all and can be an upset compared to Kaz Grala and Noah Gragson, which we'll talk about in a second. BJ McLeod there in 19th, Joey Gase 20th, Derek Cope 21st, and Noah Gragson did not set a time in qualifying due to failing in pre-qualifying inspection. He's going to be starting at the rear for that duel, so we'll see how he fares in his kind of Cup Series debut here to an extent on the high banks at Daytona. Lots of star-studded guys in this one, Kyle. There is a lot of competitive nature going around here. We've got a lot of different teammates going around in terms of who can link up together. Brad Keselowski kind of all by himself here in this duel with his Penske teammates, basically all in the other one except for Ryan Blaney.
Yeah,
so
Ryan Blaney's there, but not the same help that Cindric's going to get.
No, well, but Brad Keselowski, pretty good on the super speedways. Ryan Blaney, super good on the super speedways as well. So we'll see if those two can link together. Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, and Martin Truex Jr. in this one. So the more Toyota-oriented duel is the second one for this one. William Byron's only going to have Chase Elliott in this one, but I can't think of a better guy really to be working with on the super speedways than Chase Elliott, so that's not too bad. And Kevin Harvick had some surprisingly good speed in qualifying for SHR, so we'll see how he fares in terms of the race pace here come the duel later on tonight. He's got Chase Briscoe there as well with his drafting partner for tonight's. It's always weird how the duels kind of work out in terms of how teammates are kind of, it's always split in half. There's not usually one entire team in one duel.
Yeah,
and
it's
the
always
other,
funny how it works out.
It is pretty crazy how it all transpires after qualifying. So pretty evenly matched in terms of competition in this one, but a lot of competition to go around. There's not too many weak spots in this one. Even Corey LaJoie back there in 17th, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with, I'm sure, once the duel. He's going to be wanting a good starting position. And the duels are the most important thing in terms of getting that pit stall position. That's when you're pit for the 500. Yeah. That's what you're really looking forward to. Track position isn't the biggest thing when it comes to the 500. Of course, you want to be starting more up front. More likely that you are going to be staying out of danger instead of being in that middle pack area where action and danger usually transpires. But we'll see if the pit picks force these guys into racing a little bit harder than some others. So what are you looking at for Duel 2 here? Other than the open entries, you looking at any of the big guys? But, of course, the open entries is a big part of it.
Yeah, the open entries is what I'm going to be paying most attention to because Gragson, you think, would have good enough pace to be up there in the pack, as would Kaz Grala. So that's going to be a very, very fun matchup to watch in that second duel. But other than that, you got a lot of big names in this one, man. You got Byron and Bubba Wallace making his race debut for 2311. Harvick in there, the defending champion. Chase Elliott's in there. You got both Busch brothers. You got Blaney Keselowski. You got rookie Chase Briscoe. You got Chastain making his debut in the 42. Like, you got a lot of fun stuff in there. Truex in there as well. You got a lot of really fun stuff in there. Chris Buescher, who's always a sneaky guy on super speedways as well. So this is a very deep duel. I think this is going to be fantastic racing throughout it. And I hope that we get through it without a wreck, because if we do, we're going to be getting some great racing from these guys, because a lot of the names in here are kind of the names involved at the end of super speedway races. This is going to be a great one to watch. I think the big thing to watch once again is who's linking up with who's looking good in terms of race pace, because of course single car is fine, but how do you perform in the draft? That's always the big thing, because you're not going to be out front the entire race. No. So nice to see the 23 and 24 on the front row. That's just nice to see. And then the 3 and the 4 behind that as well. It kind of nice numbers there. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. But I got to say.
And the 9 right behind them there.
Yeah, exactly. So, you got some fun stuff in this one. But yeah, excited to see some debuts in this one. But the big thing I think everyone's going to be watching is, what does that 23 do? Like it's the big story all week long. Top practice, top 5 car in qualifying. What do they do in that first race scenario? We know Bubba Wallace is great on super speedways. He's shown it time and time again with Richard Petty being there at the end of super speedways, being in the conversation. Yes. What do they look like in this first race?
For sure. I think we get into some predictions, Kyle. We got to pick who's going to win each duel and who's going to be the open entry from each thing. That's going to wrap up today's episode here with this one. But Duel 1.
Today's first episode.
Yes, that is true. We've got a later one coming tonight, as we've talked about. So it's going to be a busy day for us in terms of watching on Zoom and calling on Zoom, but it's well worth it. So Duel number 1, you got some favorites in there. Hamlin, Logano, Alex Bowman, of course, starting on pole with that single car speed. We'll see if that translates into the draft. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is always a fun one to watch.
Oh, yeah.
But back to Benedetto as well as a sneaky super speedway racer. If he can keep it clean, he's had some issues in the past, but if he can keep it clean, is at the finish of this one, watch out for Matt Benedetto. So do you want to go first for this one in terms of your winner pick? So who do you have winning Duel number 1 tonight?
There's a lot of interesting names in this one. You mentioned some of them. There's some dark horse picks in this one as well. But you know what? Tampa Bay, man. Tampa Bay. I'm going to take Eric Almirola to win the first duel.
Wow.
I don't know if he's going to be my Daytona 500 pick quite yet. I haven't really decided on that one yet, but I think he's
You haven't missed in the playoffs. You can't pick him to win the Daytona 500.
I know. I'm just saying he's going to be one of the top contenders here, especially when you look at the speed that they've had this week. Very, very strong car, very, very strong driver. In Tampa Bay, man, you got the Lightning, you got the Rays, you got the Bucks, you got the Raptors there right now.
You got the Almirolas.
There's a lot of championship flavor over there. Eric Almirola, what the hell? Duel number 1, Tampa Bay continues to roll.
Okay, I'm going with the Ford as well for this one.
Ooh.
I'm going with Joey Logano to win Duel number 1.
Always a good pick.
Guy is just super good on the super speedways, and he's got the teammate and Ford combination here. I think Almirola will be crucial to his success tonight, along with Matt Benedetto. But I think they're going to be working hard to kind of keep Cindric with them all night long. And when they are working in trios and even foursomes here, I think that's going to propel them to success. And Logano is usually the one that's leading that pack of Fords when it comes time at the end of the race. So I'm going to go with Joey Logano to win Duel number 1. It's kind of an easy pick, but we'll see if he can pull it off here. I'll go with the open entry here first here since you went first for the other one.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Austin Cindric, like I just said. It kind of goes hand in hand with my first pick there. I think Logano does a great job. I think Cindric could get a top 5 in this one tonight if they all Fords stick to the plan. And I'm sure that's their main priority tonight is to make sure Cindric gets into the 500. So we'll see if maybe they kind of, lay back a little bit more than maybe what I'm anticipating. But I think Cindric here is the favorite to win this duel in terms of getting in with the open entries. Ty Dillon, I think he's going to give it one heck of a shot, but I just don't think he's going to have enough to beat Austin Cindric tonight.
If maybe there was a little bit more competition in the open entries in this one, maybe I'd go risky with it and bet against a Penske car, say that maybe they get pressured and get into a wreck or something, but there's a clear gap between the 33 and everybody else in the open entries in this one. Even the 96 doesn't have the same kind of pace that everybody else does in this duel as well. So I don't know if the 96 is going to be in the pack. We saw it last year at times. So maybe they'll be in the conversation. But I just can't bet against the 33. Maybe if the 33 and Austin Cindric there was against like a Kaz Grala or was against a Noah Gragson, maybe I'd go out and make the bet against Penske, but I just can't do it. It's a Penske car for crying out loud. They got 2 Penske powered teammates there as well. Austin Cindric wins or races his way through.
All right. What have you got for duel number 2? Who is your winner for this one? The big one. Stacked field in this one. Lots of favorites that could win the 500 on Sunday in this one. This is a tough one. I don't know what you're going to go with, but who are you thinking for the duel number 2 victor?
Man, there's so many good picks here. For starters, and you'll enjoy me saying this, I hope Kyle Busch wins this because then we have the storyline of the Daytona Triple going into the Daytona 500. Which I think that's always a very fun thing. It's never happened before. Kyle Busch won the Clash, so he's the only one that can potentially do the Daytona Triple this year. So for the storyline, I hope he wins it because then that's another thing to watch for into the 500. I don't think he will, though. I will take, you know what, a Hendrick car has to win one of the two. I don't have a Hendrick car winning the first one, so I'll take a Hendrick car in the second one. I'll say the champ, Chase Elliott, gets a little bit of redemption for Tuesday night and goes out and wins the second duel.
Interesting. I would have loved to have picked Kyle Busch for this one, but when I look at that lineup here, I don't know if he'll quite have enough to get it done here when you look at what his competition is looking like here. It's tough to bet against the Penske cars.
Let's have a decent bit of help, though, I got to say.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's just all over the place in this duel. I think you're gonna have to be. I think you have to be forced to work with people that you don't want to work with at some point in time, as is usually the case. But I think this one specifically, I'm also going with the Hendrick car, but I'm going with the other one. I think William Byron starts on pole, and I think he's going to win duel number 2. Won here at Daytona last year to win his way into the playoffs. I think he starts the season off right for himself here with the Daytona duels and is going to secure that spot, obviously, on the front row. But he's going to really put an exclamation point next to that qualifying position that he is going to be one to watch come Sunday. So I think pole position is going to bode well for him. I think Chase Elliott will be right in there with him. I think they'll give the edge to Byron here, just based off of the super speedway package. So, yeah, William Byron's my pick to win the duel. All right, open entry. The last prediction for the episode here. We've got, obviously, Noah Gragson, Garrett Smithley, and Kaz Grala in this one. It's kind of all over the place. Colleague kind of making their Cup Series debut here in the 16. Beard Motorsports, usually with Brendan Gaughan behind the wheel of it, but Noah Gragson trying to make his Cup Series debut here. So lots of different storylines here with the open entry cars, namely Grala and Gragson, but don't count out Smithley. You never know what could happen in a wreck like this, but it's so difficult for this one because you made some good points about the 62 car. We don't know what to expect from them come tonight, but I'm going to play it safe. I think tonight I didn't have Kaz Grala making it in on speed, but I think he's going to make it in on race pace here tonight. I'm going to make the 16 car as my final open entry spot for the 500. I would like to see Noah Gragson make it, but I would also like to see Colleague make it more so than Gragson with the 62 car. I think it's just a bit more of a competitive car come Sunday, and if we can have more competitive cars in the field on the 500, that's always a great thing. So not to count out Gragson, I think he could do something pretty spicy tonight. Whether that leads to checkers or wreckers, we'll see. But I'm going with Kaz Grala as the second and final open entry here for tonight's duels.
Yeah, that's a good pick. When I'm looking at last year's results as well, because we don't really know what the 62s bring into the table this year, they were also very similar last year because last year in the 16 with Justin Haley finished 17th in his duel. Brendan Gaughan in the 62 last year in his duel finished 17th. So there's literally nothing between them when you look back to last year. Of course, last year they both qualified their way in, so they didn't need to go out and race anything. Just to be different, I'll say the 62 goes out and gets it done with Noah Gragson. I'll take him to race his way through. I think that's going to be a great battle the entire way because those are both two cars that have the ability to be up in the pack and be competitive. And if there's a wreck, maybe Smithley gets his way through. Similarly, Timmy Hill in the first one, he could go through because of a wreck or anything like that. But I'll mix it up a little bit. I like the 16 in this one. I like Grala on super speedways, but I'll take Gragson in the 62 here.
All right, good pick. I can't blame you for going with something different there.
I really wanted to go bold and pick one of the MBM cars, but I just can't.
You can't do it. Yeah, that's the predictions for tonight's duels here at Daytona. Going to be a fun one to watch, I'm sure. It's going to be the first super speedway race of the season. Stay tuned for an episode coming later on tonight as we're going to recap the duels and also give our NASCAR fantasy preview for the first time this season. Wow, I'm really pumped for that one. See, well, we have to know who's making the field here first before we do our fantasy. So maybe we can get one of these open entry cars into our fantasy lineup. So we want to save a usage that we're not going to have every weekend. So that could be a strategy.
No spoilers from me. No spoilers from me.
Okay, any randomizer tonight, or are you going with Kyle's logic?
No comment.
Okay, maybe half and half. I don't know. We will see on that end. But any final thoughts before we wrap up the first episode of today, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm excited for these duels, man. I think it adds a little bit to it as well, not having the clash and having the cars around the oval as well. It's the first time we're going to see pack racing this week. and hopefully it delivers. The first one maybe will be a little bit lackluster just because there isn't as many or as much star power in that one. But then again, it is pack racing, so who the hell knows? Maybe it opens up some more opportunity for some other people to get their way through. Cindric, I'm fascinated to see what they look like with the 33 there. The Verizon scheme, it's nice to see that back. But I'm just watching. I'm just waiting for that second duel because it's going to be so entertaining with the amount of names in there, with the open entry battle as well between Gralla and Gregson. Very excited for what we got tonight. And then, of course, after that, recapping it all and getting ready for fantasy as well. A busy day, but a very exciting one nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure. Duels set off tonight, the first one with 7 p.m. Eastern time on FS1. So make sure you tune into that and come back here after that to get a instant recap basically of the duels here tonight. And we'll have plenty more content over the next couple of days as it leads up to the 500. We'll be recapping the Xfinity Series race and the Truck Series race on Saturday night. And then we're all going to lead up to the 500 there on Sunday. Going to be a fun one. Very, just a great week overall. It's just been a lot of fun.
I guess that means tonight we got to do some race picks as well for some of the truck and Xfinity. Hell, we might even mix a little ARCA in there or something. I don't know. I don't even know what the entry list looks like, but
we'll have to look at it.
Alrighty.
Yeah. And make sure to go follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag. Follow us on Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. All the links to our social channels will be in the description of the video. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you later this evening to recap the Daytona Duels. Enjoy the racing, everybody.